Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, The Black Accountant. If you haven't already done so, go ahead and like, subscribe, and leave a comment of any kind of content you want to see going forward. So today I figured I'd talk a little bit about resumes, just because it's pretty close to already during recruiting season. A lot of people are looking for work. A lot of companies have had this past year and a half or so, or like not even year and a half, but like almost a full year to kind of figure out their situation when it comes to hiring and when it comes to the COVID situation. So a lot of companies decide to hire, especially for internships, for full-time positions going forward. And I thought it would be a good idea to talk a little bit about how to prep for that by getting your resume ready. And I'm going to focus a little bit on a business sector resume. So your resume is going to look different by the job and by the industry. But I figured I'd kind of go ahead and talk a little bit more about an accounting/consulting resume. And I'm going to go ahead and show you my resume, and we'll walk through it a little bit step by step, just so that you can see a few of the key points when it comes to the resume. And yeah, I hope it's helpful. So the first thing you're going to want to have obviously on your resume is going to be your name. I actually blacked it out over here for some reason. So let me go ahead and change that. So we'll use an example. I was going to go with my name, but since we're using an example resume, I'm going to go ahead and go with, no, never mind. I'll just use my own name. So you want your name to stand out, and you want it to be in big font, so that when a recruiter is looking through resumes, they typically have 30 to 40 seconds that they spend per resume looking at it. So you want your name to be legible and very easy to see at the top. You don't want to go too big with the font, just so that it doesn't look ridiculous. It starts to look a little bit unprofessional once you go into the gigantic sizes for your name, and it kind of shows that you don't have too much content in your resume to show for. So under that, you would have your state and city with the zip code. You don't need to include your address. I see a lot of resumes where the address is included. That's a little bit outdated. A lot of times resumes don't really need that anymore. Just because HR would reach out to you once you're hired for that kind of information. At the same time, they're not really sending you anything in the mail based on your resume. So instead, what you want to do is include some kind of link to a portfolio if you have one of different types of work. But if you're like me and you don't have that, and you have more so of a LinkedIn that's professional, you could either include the link for your LinkedIn somewhere along the lines over here, next to your regular email, or a better way would be to use a QR code. So QR codes, you can find any free creator on Google, and then just kind of put in the link for your LinkedIn, and then it'll convert it to a QR code and just save it as a picture, and you could put it somewhere in the corner, and it looks really cool, and it might actually help you out a little bit. The next thing I want to talk about is including your education, your experience, and your professional or volunteer experience as well. Now, what I do want to say about these things is they're not hard set categories. These are just the categories that I chose to use. But depending on the industry again, and depending on what it is that you're trying to showcase with your resume, you're going to change the titles of the sections. So for me, since I was looking at an entry-level job at the time that I was submitting this resume, I wanted to highlight my education. So that's the first thing that I put on there. And I was an accounting degree, as you can see over here. And within that major, generally speaking, a recruiter is going to want to see a couple of things. So they're going to want to see your accounting GPA. So you're going to want to include that there. Your overall GPA, which means the GPA for all the classes that you've been taking at the establishment, at the university, and when you're going to become CPA eligible. So those are the things that you would really want to highlight here, as well as your graduation date. If it's expected, then you would type expected graduation date at the top over here, just so that they know when it is that you're going to be graduating, and if they should like funnel you into an internship or funnel you directly into a full-time position. Okay. And don't worry if your GPA is a little bit low. Some industries and some companies would require that you do include the GPA, especially if they have a GPA requirement for the position. But if not, and you have a low GPA, it's not necessarily something that you want to highlight. So I wouldn't even include it at all. Next, we want to talk a little bit about experience. And under the experience side, you want to list your jobs in chronological order. So the most recent is going to come first, and then the job that you had before that, and before that, and before that. And if you've had so many jobs, you don't necessarily need to include every single experience that you've had. You'll include the ones that are relevant to the position that you have. And by relevant, I mean that there are elements of the experience that translate over. So you have transferable knowledge, transferable skills, and transferable experience. And notice that there's consistency here where I chose to have 3 bullet points per job title, job section. This is just so that it's very clear to the recruiter or whoever's looking at my resume that, hey, this is lined up, there's attention to detail, and at the same time, it's just consistent. Like if there's a period under one sentence, there's a period on all of them. And same thing, the alignment matches up. All the titles align, all of the dates align, and all of the tenses for the action verbs match up. Now, when it comes to action verbs, you can easily Google what action verbs match your industry or what you're looking at. So in a consulting or a little bit more accounting type resume, you're going to want to show that you can collaborate well. You want to show that you start things. You want to show that you're somebody that takes initiative. And those types of things kind of transfer over. So you would hear a word like developed means that you started something. You're a self-starter. You research something. You're able to take the initiative to look things up, to find out information, to figure it out. And then preparing shows that you have attention to detail, etc., etc., etc. So that's kind of a little bit about the experience section. Professional involvement and volunteer activities. So in accounting and consulting, like I was just saying, a lot of times they do want to see that you were involved in things while you were on campus. So if you don't have a job, the next best thing would be volunteer experience or being involved with different clubs and associations on campus. And I would typically shy away from including an organization where you didn't really do much, especially if you were just a member, unless it's something that's really going to help you. Again, I'm using kind of a little bit of an outdated resume of mine where I didn't necessarily go through all of the exact steps just because I couldn't find the Word version and it's a little bit difficult to highlight and go through things on a PDF format. So over here, I had MISA, and it just, if you have any kind of acronym, you want to spell out what it is. And then you want to have a bullet point, 2 bullet points maybe on your involvement in that specific thing. Now, this specific activity here has 3 bullet points. Why? This is because this was a very relevant experience. And at the same time, I had been with this specific organization or club for a while and was promoted twice. So I didn't have enough space to necessarily give more points on each of those things. And I figured president would be the most beneficial to me, or the most thing I wanted to showcase. So I put that first with its description. Instead of adding 1 bullet point for each one, I chose to highlight 3 really good things about being a president, and then just changing the font type a little bit and matching the spacing just to show that, hey, these are also part of this specific experience. I had just been promoted twice. Same thing with these other ones. And again, you want to put it in the order of what you're currently with, down towards what you had started with in terms of dates. Now, skills and interests is a really debated section. Skills, obviously you want to include skills for sure. I mean, if anything, most jobs are going to look at what are your qualifications aside from experience. Do you have any kind of certifications? Do you have any experience with certain types of stuff? So you're going to want to really look into that. And then Languages, since I'm bilingual, you want to also include what kind of language that you speak. Like you could put in the dialect, you can put in fluent, proficient, whatever level it is. You don't just want to say Spanish and leave it up to that, and then you get hired and they're like, oh, we need you to translate for this person, but you're not actually fluent in Spanish. You only know very basic levels of understanding it. That's not something you want to include unless you're going to actually say that under languages. And then interests. This is typically something you would include if you're still a student or if you're entry level in the beginning of your career, like you have less than 5 years of professional experience, then you might want to include interests because it gives you a speaking point with your recruiter if they want to go over your resume, in an interview if somebody wants to go over your resume, or if you're just networking. A lot of times they might look at this and say, hey, okay, we have some things in common. Now I have something to talk to you about outside of your experience, just on a relatability level, you know? And that kind of gives you a little bit more of a likability factor. And you always want to keep your resume to one page, especially if you have less than 5 years of experience, you're looking at entry level work. Now, when you become more professional and you've been working for a while, then there's more of an allowance on 1 to 2 pages, sometimes even 3. So that's kind of the main things that I want to showcase here. Aside from reducing the white space, you don't want to have anything less than 1/2 inch margins all around if you have a lot of experience to list. If you don't have too much experience to list overall, you might want to stick with 1 inch margins, which will give you less space on the paper, which is good if you don't have too much experience to highlight. That's it for today's video. If you like the content or if you have anything else that you wanted to see covered, go ahead and comment below. I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts.